Yes, you read the title correctly. There was a time in Pokemon where an adult character manipulated one of the protagonists. Manipulated them to the point where the protagonist Ruby even decided to abandon his primary love interest, his best friend and rival, just to be with the adult instead. And this choice not only leaves his friend Sapphire with a terrible feeling of sorrow and confusion, but it also ends up leading to the rather shocking and tragic demise of Courtney herself. The very same person who ended up manipulating Ruby, who ended up being crushed and consumed by the very fire that she first started. But what led her to her demise? What was it that caused her to take an interest in and manipulate Ruby in the first place? To give you a full picture of how tragic this story really is, we first need to go over Ruby, as he's the one to start this whole manga. The Ruby and Sapphire chapters of Pokemon Adventures. This story has our dual protagonists Ruby and Sapphire be head-to-head rivals, but in two different avenues. Contests for Ruby and gym battles for Sapphire. The two of them decide to leave Little Road Town together, and the first one to make it back to Little Road Town and complete their goal of winning all the contests or gym battles within 80 days will be declared the winner between the two of them. Now, while Sapphire left the house with her parents' knowledge, Ruby left without telling either of his parents anything because he assumed that based off of past experience that his father Norman, the Pelibrook City gym leader, would scold him and hold him back from pursuing contests. So, not only is he on a constant mission to one-up and be ahead of Sapphire so that he can become a master rank coordinator in Hoenn as soon as possible, but he's also constantly on the lookout so that he avoids his father. Not only is he scared of him, but they also have what is currently a broken bond. Surely this has nothing to do with Courtney though, right? Oh, well, you'll see. So as Ruby makes his way from Little Road Town to Verdandurf Town, he has to go through a few of his personal hurdles before getting there, such as avoiding his father in Pelibrook City. You know, the very same place that he's a gym leader in, while also taking care of his father's soon-to-be apprentice, Wally. And then after he's done that, he gets carried away by C and is saved by Mr. Briny, who takes him to Dewford Town, where he meets up with Sapphire, who is already ahead of him in her journey. The tension and romantic tension grows between the two here, which other people outside of them can see, but they play it off as tension, and the two go their separate ways to train in Dewford. Ruby trains in Granite Cave where he tries to find a Milotic, but he ends up getting attacked by hordes of Pokemon, to which Steven comes to his rescue. There, the two team up and Ruby's Pokemon evolve, allowing him to show off his battling skills that he has honed since he was a child, but skills that he intentionally hides away from the world and pretends that he doesn't have. But Steven obviously notices and heads off telling Ruby that he hopes that they can meet again. As Sapphire is finishing her battle with Brawly, she hears a rumbling in the cave and gets worried for Ruby's safety. She rushes over there despite Brawly's warnings. She rushes in panic and hopes that Ruby is alright. And to her amazement, he's just standing there nonchalant. Turns out the rumbling was caused by Steven's Pokemon. But the moment that Sapphire heard Steven's name, she takes Ruby on her Wailord and tries to rush over to find him. Because though Ruby doesn't know it, Sapphire has a very important letter that needs to be sent to Steven from his very own father. A letter that will help shape the very climax of the story. It's here that we finally get our first glimpse and introduction to Courtney. Ruby and Sapphire are traveling on Wailord to catch up to Steven when night arrives. And so, Sapphire decides it's best to rest the night. But since Ruby's a boy, she gets to sleep on Wailord, and she picks him up and tosses him over to the abandoned ship, which is where he gets the luxury of sleeping in. And unfortunately for him, he runs into a plus-minded duo who act cute, but in reality, they're mischievous and play all kinds of tricks on him and confuse all of his Pokemon. Sapphire, on the other hand, with her super sharp senses, hears someone coming to where her and Wailord are located and assumes it's Ruby. But she very quickly realizes that someone else is there, leading to Tabitha and Courtney's entrance. The two arrive at the abandoned ship to find something which we later find out is a scanner, but Courtney decides to stay back and sends Tabitha to search for it instead. At first, we're made to believe that Courtney does this because she's either bossy or lazy, but it turns out it's because she was aware that Sapphire was hiding and spying on them, and she manages to hit Sapphire right in the face. Sapphire hits back with a kick, and the two send out their Pokemon to fight as well, which Sapphire's Pokemon are immediately overwhelmed and both burn. On top of this, Sapphire is unable to currently open her eyes as Courtney in an earlier panel had set it up so that spicy juice came out of her gloves and intentionally hit Sapphire there so that she would be compromised. Sapphire, though blinded, manages to use her environment to shield herself and escape. Thankfully, with her super sharp senses, she's still able to maneuver around without her sight, like she's Super Saiyan 4 Goku. And since she's worried about Tabitha going after Ruby, that's where she heads off. And it's a good thing that she did, because as Ruby realizes that the plus-level miner are guarding something and he assumes it's a berry, Tabitha comes in from behind and knocks him out cold, proceeding to attack Plusle and Minun and steal the scanner. And you can stay safe from bad actors trying to steal your information on the internet using today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. As many of you know, around 3 years ago, my entire YouTube channel got hacked, all because I clicked on a wrong link that led someone to steal my session ID without my knowledge, giving them access to all of my logins on the internet, and this can happen to any one of you at any point in time. Whether it's your YouTube account, your Gmail account, or anything else, it can happen. At that point in time, if I had Surfshark VPN, I probably would have been saved. And that's because Surfshark VPN plays the middleman, receiving and scrambling your internet traffic to keep you anonymous to whoever is hosting the network. And it also comes with a proper antivirus, a private ad-free internet search, and Surfshark Alert, which lets you know if your data has been compromised. It's a simple and cheap way to strengthen your security. And that's not all, as using Surfshark VPN can also help you browse the internet as if you're placed virtually anywhere in the world, allowing you to view content and shows that would otherwise be restricted within your region, such as the Pokémon seasons. Get an exclusive Surfshark deal that not only unlocks the best price, but also gives you 4 extra months of Surfshark using my code HybridHero4 or the link in the description down below. Thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring this video, and now it's back to the fight. The still blinded Sapphire somehow manages to drag an unconscious Ruby out of there, and the two finally team up. Courtney regroups with Tabitha, and the two realize that there are 2 kids on the ship, not just one. Ruby and Sapphire are unable to use their Pokemon since they're all burned or confused, and Sapphire decides that the plus-old minded that were playing pranks on Ruby are the only options that they have to take out these 2 strangers. The 2 kids approach the Pokemon and make quick work of Courtney and Tabitha, but as Ruby and Sapphire are learning more information about the two Pokemon await the next order. And since Ruby doesn't give it quick enough, they manage to fate Minun and attempt to end Plusle right then and there. Luckily, Ruby makes up for his mistake by threatening Tabitha and Courtney's buried mission. For some reason, the two need the scanner, and they have it with them. But Ruby flaunts the diary that has the password to use the scanner. And when Tabitha calls his bluff, he almost drops it in the sea and says that he will only give it if they give him Plusle. This leads to Courtney and Ruby's first interaction, but Courtney, as hard as he's trying, isn't able to get a good look at Ruby's face. Sapphire takes advantage of this opportunity and uses Minun to amp up Plusle and attacks Courtney, stealing the scanner away from them. And with that, our 4 heroes make off. Unfortunately, they find out that they were duped as well, as Courtney only dropped the outer shell of the scanner. But hey, at least they have the diary. But Ruby having the diary and being a witness to Team Magma's first moves are what make Ruby a danger to the organization. And so, Courtney vows to find him and get rid of him. When the 2 Team Magma admins go to report their findings and winnings to an intoxicated Maxi, they ask if they can go burn up Slateport City in celebration, to which Maxi tells them to wait for the last admin to return. Blaze, a manga exclusive character written just for the story. And when he does return, Maxi gives him permission to run amok. However, surprisingly enough, they were calm and collected and calculative, because instead of destroying the entire city, they went after a bigger priority: to kidnap Captain Stern and Doc so that they have a submarine to find the red and blue orbs. And unfortunately for Ruby, he was caught up in this mess. Not because Courtney and Tabitha were able to recognize him, but because he got Doc and Captain Stern by force to help make Pokeblocks and was just caught up in the mess. So yeah, pure coincidence. Ruby also realizes that Team Magma is unaware of who he is, but he decides to step in and help Captain Stern and Doc, as he doesn't want them to be tortured. So he draws Blaze away into the submarine by using Pokeblocks that his Slugma would enjoy, allowing him to fight in a way where no one else is able to see him except for Blaze himself. Ruby and Blaze go at it, but like how Tabitha puts his opponents to sleep before fighting them, Blaze also has a nasty trick up his sleeve. Blaze uses fires to make people see things that aren't really there, specifically his opponent's worst nightmares, hence the name Blaze the Illusionist, allowing Blaze to defeat Ruby in the mental game and overwhelm and defeat Ruby with heat in the physical game. As Ruby sees visions of his worst nightmare, his father, and him as a kid running off to his father to learn how to battle and get stronger, something shatters. And to Blaze's surprise, what he thought was a mentally broken Ruby sprung up stronger than ever. Because as Ruby stated, his worst nightmare is also his best memory. And that's exactly what keeps him going. Ruby uses his Marshtomp to sink the submarine to the seafloor, while using the emergency escape pod to make it to the surface, while reflecting upon his father. Blaze and Team Magma aren't done yet, however, as you'll see them again very soon. Ruby makes it outside, and to his horror, he's all over TV. And do you remember why this is an issue? It's because he's still in hiding from both of his parents. And of course, Norman catches up to him, all because of this, and they end up having a clash of a lifetime. It was a brutal battle with a tough lesson, reason, but it also came with tough love and ultimately his father's approval for Ruby to participate in contests. But going through this whole battle and the aftermaths of it is like a whole nother video itself. So much so that I actually have a video on it, as well as 3 other aspects of the Ruby and Sapphire manga, all of which that are pivotal to the story that you can really watch in any order. So I highly encourage that you do so. But for the sake of this video, all you essentially need to know is that Ruby is no longer in hiding from his dad. Not really on talking terms, but it's clear that they both care for each other. After this battle, Ruby's reporter friends help make the verdict of town, and he finally gets a chance to participate in some contests. But not before the encounter with Courtney. As the crew is taking care of things in Rustov Tunnel, earthquakes start threatening everyone there. And of course, it turns out to be the work of Courtney and Team Magma. The grunts take on the others there, and when Ruby's friends ask for help, he denies it because again, he's trying to hide his battling skills from the rest of the world. I know at this point it may seem annoying, but trust me, it's for a good reason. Courtney, however, catches wind of him and takes a strange lighter of sorts and puts it to her head, which leads Ruby's face to appear on a piece of paper. Courtney changes her plan and takes Ruby and Marshtomp away from the rest of the crowd. Ruby is unable to escape because of another bear juice tactic that Courtney used to make her gloves sticky. And when Ruby questions why she kidnapped him, she tells him not to play dumb with her, as she knows it was him that she met twice now, and drags him to the ground and tosses him aside. Courtney engages Ruby in a battle, but Ruby doesn't fight back. Courtney then tells Ruby to use his Pokemon, as she only brought him here so that other people wouldn't have to see him fight. She then shows this lighter from earlier and explains that the 3 admins of Team Magma carry a horn with a lighter inside, which ignites their flame of memory. And as they combine their flames, they're able to combine and see each other's memories, which means that every single one of the Team Magma admins knows about Ruby, knowing that Ruby lets his team loose for battle, and Courtney also gets excited for the battle. Courtney with her Ninetales alone overwhelms Ruby and lets loose a fire around them. Unlike Tabitha and Blaze, she doesn't have any tactics. Her method of fighting is to let everything burn at once. As Ruby is down on his knees, Courtney slowly walks up to him and confronts him about his passion for contests. And Courtney also claims that she likes beautiful things, but asks him how he defines true beauty. She waves a ribbon in front of his face, claiming that a stupid ribbon doesn't determine whether something is beautiful or not, because according to her, the most beautiful thing in this world is the moment when everything is engulfed in flames. Courtney kneels down to level with Ruby. She slowly reaches out and grabs his face, and then proceeds to ask him if he wants to join Team Magma. Ruby manages to escape from Courtney as the Wismer family from Rustov Tunnel's hyper voice sets him free. He ponders Courtney's question and wonders why he chose to ask him that, but deduces that she really must have meant it when she asked him. Courtney presses him for an answer, but Ruby sees the state of his Pokemon and understands Courtney's strength, so he recalls them in their Pokeball and sends Marshtomp off to run away with them. Courtney entertains himself and presses on with the fire to engulf Ruby, and talks about how someone who's as righteous as him, someone who will sacrifice himself to protect Pokemon, who refuses to join an evil organization, is about to go up in flames, all because he turned down her offer. To which Ruby tells her that she's mistaken. That's not who Ruby is. He's not someone who's going to sacrifice himself, and he claims that he's going to survive with his Pokemon. Courtney gets pulled back with some string that Ruby set up earlier. Thanks to Marshtomp's antenna and natural senses, the two knew that they had help coming this way the whole time. So Ruby placed string on Marshtomp so they could soundly escape. How this string didn't burn up, don't ask me. But in an incredibly crazy panel, Marshtomp pulls Ruby to safety while Courtney is stuck, ready to get consumed in the very flames that she set up. Would have been cool if this was what I was referencing in the intro, right? Oh nah, there's a lot more to the story than that. Ruby, all smug, cuts the string so that Courtney can escape, but not before the fire engulfs her a bit. Luckily for her, she comes out relatively unharmed, just some burnt clothes here and there, but it does make for a cool pose in the panel if you ask me. Blaze contacts Courtney about the whereabouts of the red orb, since that's what they were looking for, but Courtney claims that she's not interested in that anymore because she's found something much more interesting, to which Blaze immediately realizes that it's Ruby. Courtney laughs and tells Blaze to cover her with Maxie, as she can be extremely stubborn when it comes to things like this. So this is where we finally get to see Courtney develop what seems to be obsessive feelings for Ruby. Is it romantic though? At this point in the story, it's hard to tell, but as things move forward, the general fanbase believes it to be true for more reasons than one. Really, we don't even know if she's a full-fledged adult yet, but I have evidence that pretty much proves that she is. years. We'll take a look at that later on in the video. Regardless of what, she does seem much older than him, and just obsessing over a boy because he outsmarted you and finessed you a few times is kinda crazy. But we will see how crazy that crazy really is near the climax of this adventure. The story continues, and sometime after this encounter with Ruby, the Ruby and Sapphire manga turns into an all-out war, with it being the Hoenn gym leaders, Elite Four, champions, and protagonists against all of Team Magma and Team Aqua. Who, yes, Team Aqua is in this story, but Team Aqua is more relevant to Sapphire's growth as a character than Ruby's, so yeah, sorry Team Aqua fans. Aside from Archie, the rest of them are pretty much non-existent for this video. But the Team Aqua admins do face off against 3 of the gym leaders, while the other 3 active gym leaders fight off against the Team Magma admins, where Courtney finally makes a return in the manga after a bit of a hiatus at the Mossy Space Center, where she's shown to have beaten a bunch of scientists and engages in a battle with Roxanne. But as she's losing, she pulls a negotiation or blackmailing tactic similar to what Ruby did on the abandoned ship, causing Roxanne to back down and lose the exchange, which in turn gives Team Magma enough time for Groudon to awaken. Kyogre awakens too, of course, and man, a lot happens here. Ruby and Sapphire go in their own redemption arcs. Ruby finally accepts himself and his battling nature and decide to help Sapphire protect the world. And as the 2 of them go off to fight Archie and Maxie, who have since called a truce till they awaken their respective legendaries, and they both go insane in mode thanks to the power of the red and blue orbs, Ruby and Sapphire end up being separated as the respective team leaders drag them over to the respective legendaries. This is when we can learn about the 2's backstories and realize that Ruby was a kid who liked Pokemon battles and only cared about power. He had no care for beauty, and one day while he was protecting his friend from rampaging salamence, he was successful in protecting her, but he ended up scaring his friend as he was more of a monster than a dragon. So from that day forward, he vowed to always pursue beauty over strength, causing him to be the way he is now. But since he has now accepted himself in full, he's able to press on and continue the fight against the leaders. If you want to hear more about Sapphire's side, then again, you gotta check out that particular video. But on Sapphire's side, she's getting blasted away when suddenly Steven catches her, and she's incredibly relieved. Not because she got saved, well, I'm sure it's because of that too, but more so because after all this time, she's able to give Steven the letter that she promised that she would deliver on behalf of his father. This letter also allows Steven to unlock the power of the Reggies, and thus finally give the heroes a fair fight against the villains in this war. Sapphire is relieved, and as Steven extends his hand to her, she gets caught in a blast that causes her to disappear. Ruby and Sapphire wake up in Mirage Island and are confused as to where they are, but luckily Tayton, Liza, and Juan are there to support them. Time works differently on Mirage Island. Sometimes it's slower than the rest of the world, sometimes it's faster, but luckily for them, they managed to get days of time out of Mirage Island that they wouldn't have got on the mainland. And this was useful because the 3 gym leaders were there to train them in order to prepare them for double battles, to take down not only Groudon and Kyogre, but also Archie and Maxie. And so the 2 had to learn to utilize and harness those skills and teamwork. On top of this, Ruby later discovered that both the red and blue orbs were inside him and Sapphire after their previous explosion that they encountered. They were pushed out of Archie and Maxie, and then the orbs chose the heroes as the new host. Juan then further explains that their training is not only for them to work together to beat the legendaries and the team leaders, but is also that they gain control over the orbs so that they can push them out of their bodies and use them to save all of Hoenn. After some time, Ruby and Sapphire managed to do just that and successfully complete their training, and the 2 head back to the mainland for their final battle. Meanwhile, on the mainland, all this while, Norman had finally taken on Wally as his apprentice and requested his help to find the only one who can truly end the great Hoenn calamity, Rayquaza. Sky Pillar in this series wasn't something that could be navigated by one person alone. It needed both one adult and one child, and since Ruby and his father weren't on the best of terms, Norman got Wally's help instead. And wouldn't you know it, Norman and Wally managed to awaken Rayquaza, and Norman rides into battle on top of Rayquaza, hoping that Ruby doesn't take any reckless actions, to which, that's exactly what the boy does. When him and Sapphire head back to the mainland, Sapphire actually stops him and confesses her love to him, all because it's the final battle and she doesn't know if she'll get a chance to do it later. To this, Ruby doesn't say anything and just listens. And when they finally cross the border between Mirage Island and the mainland, Ruby out of nowhere asks Sapphire if she can push the blue orb out of her body, and she does successfully. And without realizing it, this was all a part of Ruby's plan, because the moment he gets the blue orb from her, Ruby pushes Sapphire off of her own Tropius and gets her to land in Wallace's air car, trapping her there so that she can't escape and enter the battle. And when Sapphire pleads and asks Ruby why he's doing this, he admits that he shares the same feelings towards her, and it's for that reason that he can't take her into this battle. At that moment, who else lands in but Courtney, who asks Ruby if he's done with his little farewell, and the 2 head off together as a team, as partners to take down Groudon and Kyogre in what has to be one of the coolest spread panels ever ever in the series. But more importantly, as Wallace, Sapphire, and Steven are left in absolute confusion, yes, Ruby just left the person that he's in love with for side chick Courtney. And I say side chick because that's literally who she is in this scenario. As Ruby rides Sapphire's Tropius into the final battle, he turns around and questions things and wonders if he's made a mistake. To which Courtney raises her voice at him to get his focus and attention back to the battle, mocking him a bit for having his mind waver about his decision. But she quickly follows suit by asking him what's on his mind, to which he says nothing. He just didn't expect to ever be teaming up with her, not until they met on Mirage Island at least. It's here where we get to see a flashback of something that we've never seen before. Ruby was on Mirage Island sitting with his feelings towards Sapphire, when suddenly Courtney appeared out of nowhere to speak with him. Ruby immediately went on the defensive, sending out Swampert to fight her, and when he questioned what she was doing on Mirage Island, Courtney stated that she would have chased him to the ends of the world if she needed to. When Ruby demands to know what she's up to, Courtney states that she knows that Ruby is going to leave the island to face the ancient Pokémon along with Sapphire, and casually confronts him and asks him to team up with her instead. Ruby and even Swampert are shocked, and Ruby asks why he would ever join forces with the Team Magma admin, especially since Team Magma's goal was to let Groudon loose. Courtney then explains that freeing Groudon was Maxie's plan, and she just wanted to have some fun along the way. But now that things have gotten too out of control, she feels as if destroying Hoenn is pointless, and not something that she can allow, hence why she asks Ruby to join her. Ruby hesitates, but Courtney pushes further by stating that she knows more about Groudon than Ruby does, and pushes one step further by asking Ruby what may happen to Sapphire if she got consumed by the blue orb. With that image of Sapphire burned into his mind, prioritizing her safety above anything, Ruby reluctantly decides to team up with Courtney. Okay, so let's break this down real quick because we won't have an opportunity to do so later on in the video. Courtney is not just obsessive, she's hyper obsessive. She manipulated Ruby into teaming up with her here just because she wants to be around him. And let's be honest, this is technically up to the reader's interpretation, but I don't think she actually wanted to stop Groudon Kyogre. Like she told Blaze earlier, she was just more interested in Ruby, and so she played the anti-hero just for her own desire to be around him. For someone to say that they would travel to the ends of the world to find them over nothing is crazy. If this was someone that she cared for, it wouldn't be crazy. It would be sweet, but what does she know about Ruby? Nothing. During her first interaction with him, she got duped by him. The second interaction, her and her team members kidnapped him and then he battled them and escaped from them. The third interaction, he has her express her interest in him and asked her to join Team Magma, to which he basically played her, managed to escape again, and let her suffer into her own fires, to which she was slightly impressed, and these were the only introductions that they shared together to make her go, yeah. My full attention and interest now revolves around this 11-year-old boy, which, by the way, if you had any doubt that she was interested in the kid or not, right after their flashback ends, we see Courtney mumble to herself that she's jealous because she knows how much Sapphire means to Ruby. Ruby doesn't hear it, but we as the audience do. So Courtney here does imply romantic interest to some degree, by the looks of it at least. Maybe it's not romantic and just a need or desire to be important in his life, but I don't know, man. It's still kind of weird. Anyways, regardless, Courtney takes it a step further by saying that instead of Sapphire, he's going to accomplish great things with her now, and they ordered the legendaries to step down. Unfortunately, the legendaries don't listen, and so Courtney takes the lead and Ruby and her fight the two legends to get their attention. How do I say this in a non-explicit term? Courtney's relationship with Ruby is like mommy energy. She tells him what to do and likes being in control and likes seeing him grow, because that's exactly what happens in the next few panels, as she's impressed by his growth after she's called the shots on their next attack. But Ruby isn't as coordinated with her as he is with Sapphire. With Sapphire, the relationship was quite balanced, and they complemented each other on the areas where they lacked, because even here, he can't stop thinking about her. Unfortunately for him, to utilize the red orb, you need to have absolute focus and concentration, and distraction leads to consequences. Courtney yells at Ruby to focus, and while she's doing that, the same pain from distraction happens to her. See, in Ruby's case, he was distracted by Sapphire. In Courtney's case, she was distracted by Ruby, and the same thing happened to both of them. So, I mean, I think it's safe to say that Courtney was distracted in the same way, right? I don't know. Again, hard to tell. Courtney and Ruby try once again, and to their surprise, they actually managed to get Groudon Kyogre to stop in their tracks. But what they thought was a blessing turned out to be a curse, because the two Pokemon decide to get rid of the humans before getting rid of each other. Courtney saves Ruby, and as Swampert protects him for the legendaries, Ruby asks Courtney if she's alright, oblivious to the fact that Kyogre was just about to do him in. Courtney sees this and pushes Ruby out out of the way and gets slammed herself, crushed by Kyogre and all the rubble. Ruby rushes in to help her, but Groudon stops him in his tracks. Courtney begins to doubt whether or not she can even accomplish this mission, when luckily Rayquaza descends from the heavens, getting the attention of Groudon and Kyogre. Ruby rushes towards Courtney's aid as she explains what Rayquaza is, and the three go at a three-cornered battle. Ruby is completely unaware of how Rayquaza got there, but Courtney knows exactly who brought it here. As Courtney tries to tell Ruby, the three legendaries let out a cry, leading Ruby to not hear what Courtney is saying. And as Courtney grabs Ruby's face to tell him again, her leg gets wrapped by a tentacle that pulls her in and drags her away from Ruby. As Ruby goes to save her, the weather trio have a clash that sends Ruby and Swampert flying. When Ruby scurries to save Courtney from the rubble, we see Courtney on the other side of it, claiming that she's done for, that she doesn't know what happened, but her leg is unable to move. And so, in her broken state, she passes over the blue orb and tells Ruby that if he has the strength to help her, he should use it to fight the ancient Pokemon instead. Ruby is amazed by her will, but him and Sapphire need days of training to do. She was able to do just like that. Ruby yells out to Courtney in distress. And while Courtney is lamenting over how sad it is that she meets her end this way, after convincing Ruby to swap partners, Ruby tries to bring life back into her by telling her that after they stop the fight, that the two of them should go compete in contests together. Life sparks back in Courtney's eyes as she puts her head down with a smile and questions how Ruby knew that she used to compete in Pokemon contests. Ruby tells her that he knew that she pulled out her ribbon to burn back at Rust Earth Tunnel and not his own. Courtney laughs and tells him not to remind her of her past embarrassments. But she does reminisce on her days as a young coordinator fondly and states that this is probably the reason as to why she got so interested in Ruby in the first place. The cave starts collapsing, and as Courtney's trying to speak to Ruby, he once again can't hear her due to all the tremors. Courtney has no means for Ruby to hear what she's saying, but she's determined to convey her final message to him in whatever way she needs to. She takes the bubblegum that she's been chewing this whole series and uses one of her special berry mixtures to strengthen it so that she can attach her lighter with the flames of memory so that Ruby can see what she saw, because she won't have the means to tell him anymore. The lighter flies off and the legendaries clash, and while Swampert saves Ruby, Courtney gets crushed by the collapsing of the cave, and to Ruby's horror, Courtney is completely crushed. But off in the distance, Ruby sees Courtney's lighter, and as it falls into his hand, he takes out a paper from his bag to reveal the message that Courtney has been trying to tell him this entire time. And from the flames of memory appears the Balance Badge. The badge of Pelberg City's gym leader, Norman. Ruby realizes that his father is the one who brought Rayquaza here, and through the flames, Courtney tells Ruby that at the Moss Deep Space Center, she saw his father stake everything about his life to find Rayquaza. Ruby, with emotion in his eyes, tries to tell Courtney that he does see it, and we cut to a near lifeless Courtney go over her history with Ruby. Since the incident of Rust Earth Tunnel to recruit him into Team Magma, she learned everything about him, so much so that through this, she learned more about his father than Ruby knew. Norman dedicated his entire life to finding Rayquaza, and while it's unclear why, Ruby understands that him and his father need to work together to stop the legendaries from fighting any further. And thanks to Courtney's help, for the first time in the series, Ruby and Norman are able to team up together as father and son, and take on the legendaries, giving us some of the coolest panels and shots in the entire series. Ruby starts reminiscing over his history with Courtney and claims that even though she had asked him to be a part of Team Magma, the two of them were destined to be friends from the start. Friends because they share the same passion for Pokemon contests. And with one final thank you, the flame of her lighter goes off. And Ruby, with full conviction, with his father by his side, takes both the red and blue orbs to stop Groudon and Kyogre. This battle was beyond epic, and it truly felt like a worthwhile battle against legendaries, not only because of the cinematic shots and tension that we got, but because there was actual loss in the story. Courtney had perished, but it wasn't just Courtney. Steven commanding the Reggies had also come to his end, and the one that we didn't expect past this was Norman, as commanding Rayquaza didn't come for free. As Norman falls, Ruby reflects on Courtney's words about how Norman gave up his gym challenge for 5 years just to find Rayquaza. He sacrificed his dream of being a gym leader, and when Ruby thinks about why he would do it, Ruby realizes that Norman was protecting Ruby from a mistake that he made 5 years ago that caused Rayquaza to flee from a research lab and go amok. And to make up for his son's mistake, he gave up his dream, his family, just to protect his son, so that he can go on to pursue his own dream, and so that he can keep Hoenn and the rest of the world at peace. Ruby cries, realizing the truth of his father, and understands why he was the way he was all this time. As Norman closes his eyes and slowly falls to his end, Courtney's lighter lights up one last time from behind him, and Courtney tells Ruby that he did it for the same reason that he kept Sapphire away from the battle, and that people do things like this for the people that they really care about. And with that, Norman perishes, and Courtney's flame fades from existence. Ruby is left to mourn over the loss of his father and friend, but not for long. As to Ruby's surprise, Archie and Maxie are still alive and arrive to take Ruby out. Ruby realizes it was them who dragged Courtney into the cave and hurt her, to which Archie and Maxie admit to and say that it's retribution, as we see the corpse of Courtney laying there, crushed under the rubble. This is not just for show either. She really did meet her end here. Fortunately, Sapphire is able to finally join the fight, and she's able to work together with Ruby to bring an end to Archie and Maxie's ways. As the battle ends, Ruby sends out his 6th and last Pokemon to finally end this calamity once and for all, Celebi. And as Ruby and Sapphire are laying during the aftermath of the battle, Ruby recollects how he's lost 3 very close and important people to him: Steven, his father, and Courtney. And as their existence in this world completely fades away, Celebi feels Ruby's emotion, shatters the red and blue orb, and rewrites the past, sending Ruby and Sapphire to a slightly altered future, which has Steven, Norman, and Courtney there all alive. And Ruby only recognizes this as he sees Courtney fly away on her Swallow, and as she's happy that she cheated the end of her life, she decides to go back to her dream that she abandoned so long ago. The dream that Ruby helped her remember, a dream of growing berries, making Pokeblocks, and entering Pokemon contests. The story ends and we see both Ruby and Sapphire complete their journeys on the same promised day as they run off together. Meanwhile, we see Courtney just living a simple life of watering berry plants and finally living the life of her dreams. So while this story and relationship took all kinds of twists and turns, somehow Ruby and Courtney's relationship ended up serving both of them for the better. To clarify, when I say relationship, I don't mean romantic. I'm just talking about the bond that they shared. But to touch base on the romantic point real quick, if it were romantic, then yes, it would be pretty weird because Ruby is 11. And by the calculations of the CEO of RUSA's Tumblr post, we get to see that Courtney is actually 19 because the girl in Courtney's flashback is actually Daisy, Blue-Green or Gary's sister from Palatown, who is currently 19 at this point in the manga. So yeah, when I say he was manipulated by an adult, this is what I mean. But again, it's debatable whether it was romantic or not. And just as a quick note to any of you out there who's felt manipulated, pressured, or taken advantage by someone who's older, just know it was never your fault. You deserve respect, safety, and the chance to heal. No matter what anyone made you feel, your story isn't over, and you have the power to keep writing it from here. Just like how Ruby managed to write his story for himself. Because despite how crazy and all over the place their bond was, in the end, the two somehow managed to make it work for themselves in the best way possible. While it wasn't clear early on, it's clear now that Courtney was incredibly interested in Ruby because she just saw a part of herself, her childhood self, in him. Not only were they coordinators as kids, but Courtney also displayed tremendous strength in the manga when it came to battles. Strength that I think is often overlooked. She might be one of the strongest characters in the manga, period, similar to Ruby. And she's just as cunning and resourceful as Ruby, using all kinds of means, whether that be trickery or resourcefulness and knowledge of berries to win the fight. Her obsession could still be seen as romantic, and there's every possibility that it was. But really, all she was trying to do was come to terms to accept and nurture herself. The child who she thought that she had lost, but the one that was inside of herself this whole time. Now, does that mean to say that it's okay that she was manipulating a child like this? No, of course not. And luckily, she didn't take it too far. And actually, in many situations in the final fight, she threw away her own life just to protect Ruby, showing genuine care towards him. But while the care may have been genuine, it was probably symbolic of her trying to guard and protect the little girl that she once lost. And while Ruby didn't even realize it, he not only grew and made the best out of his time with Courtney to show his feelings towards Sapphire, repair the bond with his father, and strengthen and elevate himself, but he also saved her in the process, as in the end, she flies off no longer in search of Ruby, but flies off realizing that everything she was looking for was within herself all along.